Ladies and gentlemen, sit down, grab some snacks, and get ready to have your mind blown, because you're watching the ups and downs of Nicolas Cage.
Yes, thank you. Hello, and welcome to the Ups and Downs of Nicolas Cage, where every week we take a look at the best and the worst Nicolas Cage has to offer. As always, I'm your host, Logan Mock, and today is a Monday, which means we are reviewing one of his better films. Today, we're reviewing 1987's Moonstruck. Moonstruck was released in 1987, directed by Norman Jewison, and written by John Patrick Stanley. It made $80.6 million on a budget of $15 million. The film follows Cher, who plays Loretta, who deals with the drama and the challenges of falling in love with her very recent fiancé's brother. The film is much better than I was expecting. I know that the film is good. It won 3 Oscars and is considered to be a turning point in Cher's career. This was at the time when she was taking a break from music and pursuing more movie roles. And there's no doubt that it's obviously a staple of the 80s. It is one of the greatest rom-coms of all time. But that's a problem for me, because I don't usually like rom-coms. Every movie genre has its tropes. Like, in horror movies, they always make stupid decisions. They always drop the weapon that they got, and that's able to kill the bad guy. In spy movies, the bad guy always reveals the plot of the film to the good guy while he's strapped to a chair or something. And oftentimes, movies find a way to subvert those genres by creating unique elements to their movies that make the cliches seem a lot less. Like in Cabin in the Woods, they make dumb decisions and they drop the weapons, but that's because we find out that they're being controlled by, these powerful engineers that are trying to appease ancient gods. That is a really good way to work with the cliches of the genre and still have a likable movie. And I feel more than any other film, except for maybe Christmas movies, rom-coms are the most mass-produced movie there is. Because there's a basic formula from them that allows them to be successful. And obviously, why mess with something that's working fine? And so studios will mass-produce rom-coms with the same plot line almost beat for beat, and they'll still be incredibly successful because that's what people want to see. And in that, a majority of the rom-coms, I think, more fall into the cliches without anything unique. And I think more than any other film genre is rom-coms are doing the cliches without adding anything new. And so, with the exceptions of the classics, like Love Actually or 10 Things I Hate About You, nearly every single rom-com is forgettable, or it's uninteresting, or just not appealing, and that's the reason I don't really like rom-coms. But this one, I think, does a great job in taking the cliches and, adding their own unique element to it, adding a reasonable story, adding reasonable expectations and actions by the people. And that's hard to do, and I think this film pulls it off really well. One thing that I noticed is this movie was made in the 80s, and the 80s was a very different time, I've been told. And this is perhaps the most Italian movie you'll ever watch. And that's not a bad thing, but you can definitely tell where they got Italian stereotypes. It takes place in New York in this, private little bubble that Cher's family and Nicolas Cage's family are the main centers of attention. Like, they are involved in everything. And it's got the stereotypes of like, oh, the Italian family, that there's a restaurant or a grocery store, or like a deli on every corner of New York. And like, they're all a part of that, or they all have very, very heavy Italian accents, or they're all very, very religious. Like, all of the real Italian stereotypes are ramped up to 11. And, it's not a bad thing, I don't think. I think that the movie is able to take this and play off of it well. I think that the acting by all of the actors is incredible. It won 3 Oscars, including Best Actress for Cher, which was a big deal, if I recall. This was a big movie. Nicolas Cage wasn't nominated for an Oscar, even though all the other acting Oscars were nominated in this film. Best Lead Actress, Supporting Actress, and Lead Actor. And that's fair. Nicolas Cage definitely plays a caricature more than a character. He's the stereotypical one-handed, hopeless, romantic bread baker. He does a good job, I think. He's definitely over the top at some points, and not like usual Nicolas Cage over the top, where he's making weird noises and just shouting. Like, he definitely falls into the more stereotypical side of the performances. And again, it's not terrible. I like him. He's humorous for most of the film. He seems like a real person, but he's just goofy. He does this like long tirade in a bakery about how his life sucks, and it's supposed to be serious, but it's a little funny. But yeah, great performances overall from the cast. I think Cher's Oscar was incredibly well deserved. For once, I don't think Nicolas Cage deserved an Oscar. I feel like the Golden Globe nomination he got was deserving, but not much more. And that's all I can say about the film without spoiling it. So after an ad break, I'll go into the spoiler territory.
Are you interested in making your own podcast but don't know where to start? Use Anchor. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast there is. It has the tools to allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will automatically share your podcast to Spotify, Apple Music, and more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and most importantly, it's 100% free. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
So the film starts off with Cher in a funeral home. She goes to dinner with her boyfriend, and then he proposes to her. And she goes on this thing like, my first marriage was unlucky, so you better do it right. You gotta give me a ring, you gotta get down on one knee to propose, all of that stuff. And he does, and they are all happy. It goes to Cher's house, and we find out that her dad doesn't like Johnny, her fiance. And we find out that Johnny has to go to Sicily because his mother is dying, and he wants to tell her that he's getting married before she passes away. And he says to Cher, hey, while I'm gone, I want you to reach out to my brother, Ronnie. Don't know why she named her kids Ronnie and Johnny. That just doesn't seem like a smart move. He says, we haven't talked in 5 years because we had a falling out, and I want you to invite him to the wedding because, we're brothers. We gotta stick together. So she finds that Ronnie works in a bakery. He bakes the bread. He is perhaps, as you would say, a baker. She goes down to him because he works in the basement, and he goes on this whole tirade about how his brother's life shouldn't get to go on because his life didn't get to go on. He says that he was engaged to be married, Nicolas Cage was, but then once he got his hand caught in a slicer because of bread that Johnny ordered, Nicolas Cage's fiance broke up with him because, she didn't want to be with him anymore. And he said that, if my life doesn't get to go on, his shouldn't either. That whole scene is fairly overacted, but it's a bit overreacted. Nicolas Cage is definitely playing a stereotypical Italian, very loud, very yelling at everyone. And Cher says, "Hey, I know that you might be angry, but let me make you some coffee so we can talk about this." They go up to his apartment, which is above the bakery, and wouldn't you know it, they have an affair. Very unfortunate. I guess it's not an affair because neither of them are married, but they sleep together, and, Cher is all like, "What? We can never do this again. This was so bad." And Nicolas Cage is like, "Baby, I love you. I want to be with you all the time." And this whole time, there's another subplot going where Cher's father, who Cher lives with her father, her mother, her grandfather, her aunt, and her uncle in a big house. And her father is having an affair because he is married with another lady. And throughout the whole movie, there's shots of that. There's scenes of him just doing his job as a plumber. And so just this whole time that Nicolas Cage and Cher are doing their thing, he's also doing a little something with a lady. Cher gets mad at Ronnie because she's all like, "Hey, I didn't like sleeping with you. It should never happen again." He's like, "Tell you what, I'll let it go and I won't come to the wedding if you come with me to the opera for tonight." And reluctantly she says, "Okie dokie, I'll go with you to the opera if, again, we never see each other again and you don't come to the wedding." As you probably guessed, because it's a rom-com and they're the two main characters, that's not the last that they see of each other. They go to the opera. Cher finds her father there with another lady. That's not her mother. And she and Nicolas Cage go back to his apartment. They do the deed, And Cher again is like, "Hey, that's so bad. We should really not be doing this." But then the morning comes, and that morning she gets a call from Johnny, and he's saying, "Guess what?